The 2025 WNBA season has set records for attendance in both in total and per game. Even before the playoffs, more than 3 million fans has flocked to see stars like A'ja Wilson of the Las Vegas Aces, Alyssa Thomas of the Phoenix Mercury, and many more. Measures it's been the most successful season in the league history, but the players aren't fully.
To understand why this omission feels deliberate, you have to look at how Caitlin Clark was treated when she entered the WNBA. There was no celebratory welcome tour, no protective grace period, no league-wide acknowledgement of what her arrival represented. Instead, she was met with excessive physicality that went unchecked. Flag ant fouls went uncalled. Hard hits were dismissed as part of the game. Veterans publicly questioned her abilities on podcasts and interviews. And while opposing players knocked her into scorers' tables, the league office remained largely silent. All of this happened while attendance records were being shattered and media deals were being signed. The league secured a $2.4 billion media rights agreement during the same period Clark was drawing unprecedented attention. Yet the internal response often felt like deliberate distancing. The message, implicit or explicit, was that the growth wasn't about her, it was about the league as a whole. But the timing makes that claim difficult to defend. You don't stumble into record-breaking success overnight. You don't accidentally become a national sports conversation. Those things happen because something or someone captures public attention in a way that transcends the existing audience. Clark did exactly that. And yet, instead of embracing that moment, the league and its players often appeared uncomfortable with it. Rather than using her visibility as a bridge to elevate everyone, the response leaned toward minimizing her role. That tension has lingered, and it's now surfacing in how growth is being framed during CBA negotiations. You can't rewrite recent history just because it complicates the narrative. The league grew, yes, but pretending that growth was evenly distributed or organically generated ignores what actually happened. Fans didn't suddenly show up in record numbers because of abstract progress. They showed up because they wanted to watch a specific player and stayed because the league offered more once they arrived.
Now, it's no secret Stevie Wonder could see that Caitlin Clark played a pivotal role in getting them the notoriety that they got. They can say A'ja Wilson, they can say all of these different fans they want, but when it comes down to one person that moved the needle for this league to even be at the table to want the type of money they want,
attendance is only part of the story. The financial implications go even deeper. The Golden State Valkyries, the WNBA's newest expansion franchise, are projected to generate more than $70 million in revenue during the 2025 season. That figure would have been unthinkable just a few years ago. In 2019, Joe Tsai purchased the New York Liberty for $15 million. Today, the franchise is valued at approximately $450 million, a 30-fold increase in 6 years. That kind of appreciation doesn't happen in stagnant leagues. It happens when visibility, demand, and cultural relevance explode. The league is undeniably experiencing massive financial growth. On that point, the Players Association is absolutely correct. Where they lose credibility is in explaining why that growth occurred. This wasn't a slow, linear climb. It was a spike, and spikes have causes. Media attention surged. Corporate investment followed. Expansion accelerated. And at the center of that moment was a player who brought millions of new eyes to the sport. You can argue for collective benefit without denying individual impact. But when you deliberately obscure the source of growth, it stops being advocacy and starts looking like revisionism. The league didn't grow just because. It grew because something changed, and everyone knows what that was.
But we know ever since Caitlin Clark arrived in the WNBA, it has not been the big welcoming party everybody thought she was going to get. Man, we've been seeing players that saw Caitlin Clark. We done seen coaches talk down about Caitlin Clark. Hell, we didn't even see the commissioner and WNBA referees ignore all of the conduct that Caitlin Clark endures. But one thing I can tell you, it is not stopping the young athlete from wanting to be great for her fans. And
take a close look at that graphic being circulated. Attendance chart climbing upward. Franchise valuations exploding. Headlines celebrating record-breaking seasons. According to the WNBA Players Association, this is the evidence that justifies their push for significantly higher salaries in the upcoming collective bargaining agreement. On the surface, it sounds like a perfectly reasonable case. The league is growing, revenues are rising, and players want a larger share of the success they helped create. That logic makes sense until you examine what's missing. Scroll through the presentation carefully. The slides are polished. The numbers are impressive. The names highlighted are familiar stars. A'ja Wilson, Alyssa Thomas, Nneka Agwumike. All elite players. All deserving of recognition. But there's an absence so obvious it undermines the entire argument. The single player most responsible for the growth they're celebrating isn't mentioned at all. Not once. This isn't a minor omission. It's not a footnote that got cut for space. It's a foundational driver of the surge they're pointing to. The one player whose presence fundamentally altered attendance patterns, television ratings, and national interest. Any honest analysis of the league's recent growth has to start with her impact. Yet in a presentation designed to justify higher salaries through unprecedented success, she's nowhere to be found. That raises an uncomfortable question. If the argument is about growth, why exclude the catalyst? The issue isn't that other stars don't matter. They do. But growth doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen evenly. Some seasons are incremental. Some players elevate the baseline. And once in a while, a single athlete shifts the entire trajectory of a league. Ignoring that reality doesn't strengthen the player's case, it weakens it. When data is selectively framed, credibility erodes. You can't celebrate record attendance without acknowledging what actually caused it. You can't claim a historic moment while erasing the central figure who made it possible. If the Players Association wants the public, sponsors, and fans to take their economic argument seriously, the narrative has to reflect reality, not just the parts that are convenient.
Players still get a tiny cut of the WNBA's revenue, even as the growth of the league has significantly grown. So this is a little chart here, but is you guys seeing a trend in these posts? Because I'm definitely seeing a trend in these posts. Where the hell Caitlin Clark at? So far, we're like 4 slides in, and I'm not seeing Caitlin. Goes on to say big moves in the Bay. Reported that the WNBA's newest team and the biggest draw, the Golden State Valkyries.
Caitlin Clark's name does not appear anywhere in the Players Association's materials. Not in the headlines. Not in the captions. Not even buried in the fine print. This wasn't a single tweet or a rushed graphic. It was a multi-slide presentation explicitly focused on unprecedented growth in attendance, revenue, and visibility. And somehow, the most watched player in women's basketball history is completely absent. That's not accidental. That's editorial. When an organization puts out a polished, data-driven presentation, every inclusion and exclusion is intentional. Slides go through multiple approvals. Messaging is deliberate, which means this wasn't an oversight, it was a choice. And it fits a broader pattern that's been visible since April. Since the moment Caitlin Clark entered the league, there has been a consistent effort from within certain circles to downplay her influence. Not deny the numbers outright, but redirect attention away from her impact. Shift credit, reframe the narrative. Emphasize collective growth while quietly avoiding the individual catalyst. The problem with that strategy is that numbers don't cooperate with ideology. Clark's games didn't just perform slightly better. They fundamentally outperformed league averages in every measurable category. Television ratings spiked when she played. Arenas sold out weeks in advance. Road attendance doubled in cities that had never seen that kind of demand. Those effects followed her, not the calendar. So when the Players Association presents growth data without acknowledging her role, it sends a message, intentional or not, that they're uncomfortable confronting the obvious. And that discomfort weakens their position. This isn't about glorifying one player at the expense of others. It's about intellectual honesty. You can advocate for collective bargaining power while still acknowledging individual impact. In fact, doing so strengthens the argument, because it demonstrates an understanding of how value is actually generated. By pretending Clark doesn't exist in the data, the Players Association risks appearing disconnected from reality, or worse, defensive about it. And in negotiations where credibility matters, that perception can be costly.
Now, it goes on to say the numbers, but given the rapid growth in revenue and franchise values, it's increasingly difficult to believe it when the WNBA cries. Then they got Nika Gumake on there say NBA involvement, which I don't really care. We don't really care about that. We will see change, pay the players. And as you guys can see there is no Caitlin Clark pose nowhere.
No matter how carefully narratives are constructed, the numbers remain stubbornly honest. The 2024 WNBA season set records for both total attendance and average attendance per game, and it did so before the playoffs even began. More than 3 million fans walked through arena doors during the regular season alone. That part is undeniable. What's being debated is why. The Players Association would have you believe this surge was the result of long-term star power across the league. Aya Wilson, Alyssa Thomas, established MVPs and All-Stars. And while those players are elite, the data tells a more precise story. Games featuring Caitlin Clark averaged roughly 15,000 fans. Games without her average, just over 7,000. That's not a marginal increase. That's a 105% difference. Not 10%, not 20%. More than double. That kind of disparity doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't come from general goodwill or vague brand growth. It comes from demand centered on a specific draw. Fans traveled. Ticket prices surged. Secondary markets exploded. Entire arenas sold out for road games that historically struggled to fill seats. This isn't about opinion. It's math. And math makes one thing clear. Clark wasn't just part of the growth. She was the engine driving it. Ignoring that reality doesn't change the numbers. It just raises questions about why they're being avoided.